Dear one, how you all doing? Well, I hope everybody's all set for the Let's Get Your Jolly season. That's coming up rather shortly. Okay, that's that time of the year when everybody's supposed to be happy and fun-loving and getting your jollies wherever you can. Wherever you can. All right. Now, I don't imagine that this is going to be a video that's going to get a lot of views because it's kind of a special interest one. And I'm kind of doing this one because, well, I got an email from a lady who's a school teacher, and she mentioned to me that she has a 10-year-old in her class who she suspects is going through a full-blown Kundalini awakening. And she asked me if I had any ideas or input that might be helpful in this situation. I got to be honest here. I don't think that this is going to be a video that's going to be viewed by a lot of people. But what I did try to do is I meditated on this. And the best that I could come up with was, what would I do if I was in the situation of dealing with a 10-year-old, similar to what she's doing? Well, one thing for sure that we know that she can't do is she can't go to the principal and say, look, I've got a 10-year-old in my class who's going through a full-blown Kundalini awakening, and I'd like to do some coaching or information sessions with them, which would probably get her fired or reprimanded in some way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, and I'm going to make a little to the side comment here. In our society right now, we have programs for just about anything and everything that pertains to a need in different age groups, different capacities, and different segments of our society. With the exception at this particular point also that right now, this moment, we have, in all probability, in the more, shall we say, technologically advanced cultures or societies, 85 to 95% of the population going through lesser or greater degrees of Kundalini awakening, extending right from older adults through the Middle Ages, through 20-year-olds, the teenagers, and now even kids. And I want to make this statement so that everyone's clear. As I have noticed over the years that the expansion of the evolutionary Kundalini awakening or spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, has now reached all the way through the population in every age, capacity, and category. Eventually, all of this process will happen in the womb before a child is born into physical reality. That's where it's going. That's the long-term goal of the evolutionary process. But we're a long, long way from that. And the other thing is this, is you may have noticed, a lot of you, that mental disorders and people having mental problems of all kinds have become almost plague-like in their manifestation. And why is that happening? That's happening because our society is not oriented towards people going through spiritual awakening, Kundalini expressing, and the mental states that many people go through in variations and degrees. And in many cases, these people are incarcerated, and that's what I said, incarcerated, when they go to a physician, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist. The majority of the time, they're medicated or put in institutions under certain programs and medical plans. The issue at hand is this. My heart goes out to this particular school teacher because I know exactly what she's going through. You have in the school system a protocol and a criteria and agenda, and you have to follow it. So your orientation is to teach a group of people. The individual itself really is not your concern as a whole. You're teaching a group. That group will become a product at the end of the educational system that will conform to a system. That system supplies vehicles or bodies to keep the machine of the economy going. So there's no place in it for anyone who's going through a Kundalini spiritual awakening. There isn't anyone in this planet or on this planet at the moment who can go to their boss and say, whatever their career is, and I don't care what it is, look, I'm going through a Kundalini awakening. I'm having massive heart center going on. I'm experiencing going into other timelines and dimensions, and I'm talking to entities and beings beyond physicality. I'm having these bliss-like orgasmic feelings in different parts of my body. You know where you're going. You're not going to tell them that. You're not going to tell anybody that because you know where you're going. How do I know? Because I was stupid enough to do that. I was. And a lot of other people are doing it. Doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means that I was stupid when I did it. I didn't know any better. But now we have enough people in the spiritual community who at some point in time might want to take a little breather from the fantasy of these highly evolved connections that are involved with the great sex and the relationships and the love and all the rest of that hogwash, and actually start considering how we're going to change the system so that governments that support just about every other kind of condition in reality begin to support the possibility that our society is going through an evolutionary process, and the greatest gift of all, our children are now going through this. Our teenagers are now going through this, and it's time to make some changes. Now, having given my little pontification here, what would I suggest that the teacher do? First of all, one of the things that I know that somebody who is a teacher in a classroom, over a period of time, they get to know the composition or the level of expression from their students. And the one thing that I can share with the lady in question here at this particular point is during my own work and working with people, and I don't want anybody to take this in the wrong context, all right? One of the things that I've been able to learn how to do over the years is to be able to adapt or slide, if you will, to the consciousness of the individual that I'm working with. Now, I know there's a belief system on this planet that everyone is equal, and that's just not so. Everyone is not equal when it comes to consciousness, expression of consciousness, and the abilities that can be developed with consciousness. On that playing field, we're not equal. At a spiritual level potential, quite possibly yes, but not in manifest three-dimensional reality, based on conditions, environment, upbringing, parental input, and a linear expression of programming over thousands of years. So what I would do is I would spend some time with the person and I would get to know where they are at. And then what I would try to do is I would try to move, and I'm going to use this word and I don't want to take it the wrong way, to their level of understanding or comprehension at a conscious manifestation level. Pay attention to that part. It's important. Pay attention. I know some of you actually like that when I do that. I'm going to like it myself. Pay attention. Kind of rings your dingy, don't it? Titillates your fancy. Anyway, to do that, you have to get the person to talk. And the one thing that must be done is there must be a bond of trust between the two people involved, whether it's a child, a teenager, or an adult. You have to be able to move. I'm able to do that. I've learned how to do that, to slide to whatever level or state of consciousness of understanding of the individual. And I do that quite readily. So that's one suggestion that I can make. The second suggestion is in the case of a child of a 10-year-old, I think another thing that I would consider doing is, this may sound a little corny, I would consider drawing pictures and in an art form type of thing, get the child involved to draw what he or she may be feeling. And at the same time, you could draw and share what you're feeling in a picture form. No words are really necessary. And one could do this whenever one could grasp some time. I can appreciate the problem here is how do you actually work with a child in this particular situation and find the time for a teacher to be able to do that. That's the difficulty. You obviously can't do it outside of school hours because that's not allowed. And the other thing is somewhere along the line, you may find out that you're not the one that is compatible or resonates with that particular child. So what other options do you have? What we're going to have to start doing is realizing more and more of us are going to have to start working together. Whether we come into the world as a professional school teacher, educator, facilitator, whatever you want to call it, and some of us who on the spiritual or in the spiritual community, specifically here, perhaps on YouTube, we're all going to have to start collaborating with each other, whether we really want to or not. Because I can assure you one thing, the government is not going to set up special leave for people who are going through Kundalini awakening. They haven't done it to this point. And as far as I know, through my own experience, the medical profession knows absolutely jack shit as a general rule, in 90% of cases, about Kundalini awakening or spiritual rebirth. I do know there are a few professionals, psychiatrists or psychologists who are aware of it. And government and politicians and people in power couldn't care less. We obviously know all they care about is profit, the economy, and making money and getting tax money. That's all they care about. So the likelihood of us seeing any assistance or programs being presented for those of us going through this in the foreseeable future are not going to happen. It's just not on the docket. The other thing that I would suggest here that may be possible is this. Another way that I've found to reach younger people is the practice of meditation. Now, the practice of meditation, I realize in a school atmosphere, is difficult, to say the least. But one might be able to slip in at some point some form of practice of imagining or pretending, as it were, before we're doing schoolwork or whatever, of actually pretending or seeing, pretendism. You see a lot of that on social media, and you see, oh my God, it's just rampant on YouTube. You see all of these great gurus and teachers and everything else up there pretending to be something that they're not, and pretending that they know something when they don't know anything, but sounding like they do, and charging money like they really do. So, pretendism. You can try that one in that sense. Now, the other thing is this, is if the school teacher involved or whatever has children of their own, then what they can do is they can work with their own children at home to enhance their own skill level in working with children who do not belong to them or in a school atmosphere. So if there are any school teachers out there and you are going through the awakening yourself, you can be sure of one thing 100% for sure. If one of you, a school teacher that's in a relationship and you have children, or you're married and you have children, if one of you, either you or your partner, is going through the Kundalini awakening or the rebirth process, you can be 100% sure that just about all your children are going to go through it. So you're their only hope. You're their only salvation, and you're the only teaching aid they're ever going to get. So you might as well learn how to do this and do it properly now, because what you can teach your children from your own experience will give you indication of how you can work with others in different age groups and capacities. And the other thing that I wanted to discuss here is this, is it's become excruciatingly important in parenting in these days and age that you don't have a situation where your teenage children evolve into what I call the secret world of teenagers. If you haven't set up an amenable, comfortable, and loving and nurturing communication with your children before they reach puberty, you're in trouble. Because if you can't communicate with them prior to puberty, you are never going to reach them when they're going through puberty and they have a Kundalini awakening. Parenting at this particular point in time has become excruciatingly important. If you are in the capacity of in a twin flame connection, if you want to call it that, or a highly vibrational soul-to-soul connection, you are the one that are going to teach the next generation of children, your children, and perhaps other children around you that are going through it also. One of the things that I do know from our own experience, myself and Nicole, our son, who is now 22 years old, as he was going through the school system, he had the same issues that a lot of you are talking about now. And in many cases, we, being fortunate enough to have gone through the experience, were able, before the age of puberty, to be able to reach him, communicate with him, and have an open dialogue where it wasn't like the teenager is at war with their parents. And this is a big issue at this particular point in time. And you have to have that line of communication and trust. Because what happened is when he got into high school, he found that he connected with other kids in high school that were going through the same issues, problems, innuendos, because of an awakened Kundalini, and especially awakened heart center. And then on top of that, the raging hormones that teenagers go through. And he was able to direct a few of those to us, where we were able to teach them that what they were going through was a normal process, and they weren't being chased or eaten by monsters or something of that nature. Don't depend on the medical system, the educational system, or the government to bring into practice or focus programs, especially for people going through spiritual awakening. It is, by my definition and many others, the most important event taking place on the planet, and is one of the highest priorities. We are losing people, thousands of them, to mental disorders and mental diseases for no other reason than lack of understanding of the evolutionary process that's going on. So it behooves me to remind anyone who's a parent who's going through this spiritual awakening process to get that relationship with your children when they're young so that by the time they get to puberty and everything's coming into play, and you are downloading them or templating. So it behooves me to remind you to learn everything you friggin' well can about the process. So as I said, for the teacher, meditation, if possible, is a wonderful thing. Teach your children, and then hopefully if you can sneak in some kind of meditation practice in regards to the spiritual awakening in the school system, which I don't know is possible or not, but it should be instituted in some cases, if, when, or whatever. It may be only possible after hours on your own time, I don't know. But let's look at it this way. The evolutionary process is going to continue. It's not going to stop. It's not going to go away, and it's going to get more intense. So since nobody else is going to help us, we have to help ourselves. We have to start working together, and we have to get off of all of this fantasy and romance about these connections and actually start thinking about what's going on and thinking about this evolutionary process that we're going through. I will tell you something that I know for a fact. I'm living proof of it, and so are many others for that matter, that I began a full-blown Kundalini awakening at the age of 36. I'm now going on 76, and Kundalini is still active in me every day. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. It will go dormant for a period of time, but it will awaken again. And the Kundalini activity will always manifest based on the individual. All of the energy of Kundalini is the same for everybody. How it manifests in the body physical depends upon the input, the programming, the hereditary and genetic traits passed down through the family, and so on and so on. So the experiences are tailored directly for the individual, and they are real. When this happens in children, they need and they require a lot of special input, just the same as if they had autism or they had some other kind of condition or whatever. They need just as much attention, if not more, for the simple reason that a lot of creative kids with a whole host of potential talents are being literally wasted because lack of knowledge of people in positions of power and authority, of the medical profession who doesn't know diddly. Go to your doctor and ask him and say, geez, I got a lot of Kundalini symptoms going on. What do you think, doc? And you pretty much know what he's going to tell you. So you're on your own. So you need to incorporate as much knowledge. For the teacher also, I would suggest to you that you get in contact with other people, besides myself. Learn as much as you can about the awakening process yourself, and then hopefully impart it or sneak it in some way, shape, or form in your teaching protocol, in your classroom, whatever. Because if you found one, I would say this to you. From our experience with our son, we found that in, say, a class of 30 students, when he was in high school, there would be at least 9 or 10 that are going through Kundalini awakening. We found also when he was in grade school, say 3, 4, 5, and 6, he would come home with stories, and about 4 or 5 of the students in every class that he was ever in, and the ones that he observed about, had 4 or 5 kids in it that were going through full-blown Kundalini awakening. And a lot of them, because they don't know how to handle it, take to drugs and alcohol. See my point? So it just sickens me to see that the most important event on the planet taking place right now, the spiritual awakening, the Kundalini awakening that's going on in all age brackets, gets the least amount of attention from the people in positions of power and authority, and get no support from the medical profession, and no support in general, like a leave of absence, or appropriate teachers or mentors for these particular types of people, even if they can't get the time off. In most cases, what they need is a reliable, honest, and sincere facilitator or teacher, whatever name you want to call them, to assist them in some way, shape, or form. But even for me, I can't talk to somebody who's underage unless I have the parents' permission. And if they're under the age of, say, 12 or 13, we wouldn't even do anything or discuss anything with them unless the parents are right there at the same time. So even myself and Nicole are limited to a degree, and we've set that up because you have to be extremely cautious and careful of what you're doing. And I respect that in regards to the school teacher in question who sent me that wonderful email that really hit my button, this one here in the middle of my chest. And that's the best I can do for you. I can't offer you anything more than that. And I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that I can, because I can't. So if it's been helpful to you or to anyone else out there, then hey, all part of my resume, my resume of assisting people in some small or minor way. Have a great day, everybody.